This interview is part of the History Heard project. The content of this interview may be used for historical research. However, no part of the video itself may be reproduced without the express written permission of an authorized representative of History Heard or Eva Schaal. Today is January 10th, 2010 at 2 p.m. This is an interview with Eva Schaal in Sarasota, Florida. She was born on November 11th, 1922 in Berlin, Germany.
So all my parents said the same thing that Frank's parents said. It's no sense that I go to school anymore because school was much more advanced. We had graduated the German way of high school, but it wasn't the, in America you didn't go to school that long and then you went for the Abitur, and that was 4 years above high school. And that was the aim of German people who could go to school to become professional to be. But I didn't go that far. I was just before my 16th birthday. And my mother said, you got to learn a trade. My mother had never worked in Germany while she was married. She worked with my grandmother when my grandmother had a boutique shop where she lived. And very good one was where you either made dresses for people, custom made, or you could buy materials and stuff like this. And my mother worked with her, but until she got married. But when she got married, my father made a pretty good living, and she never worked. She had private French lessons and private English lessons, which helped her, and so on. So my mother started to become a milliner because my father was in that business. So she was very good embroidering. I've got lots of things here that she made. The pillows over there she embroidered, the one that I embroidered in their pictures and so on. So she was very good with her hands, but I was never good with my hands. So my mother started to learn millinery, which I don't think she ever used. She did other things later on. But so my mother went to the principal of the school, and I was a very good student, and he loved me. And she says, I'm going to take Eva out of school because I wanted to learn millinery or dressmaker. He said, no way, that's not for her. And he didn't allow it. And then later on, we decided in Germany, we had preschool much earlier than they had in this country. We had preschool and kindergarten, and but the combination of that was that you also had after school already, which didn't exist here. We had the children whose parents had to work were taken care of after school. And at that time in Germany, many people, poor people, had to do something with their children. Maybe the women could still work as maids or something like that. So there was a combination of preschool and after school. And they had Jewish schools. And Jewish schools were still allowed to be open because the Jewish schools of any kind. So my mother, we decided that I should learn that because I liked to be with little children and also preschool. So when she said to the principal, I'm going to take her out and send her to the kindergarten seminar, it was called, he said, that's a good idea. So this is what I started. But what happened is I was there from October until the end of May. I went to a school like that. But each time, there were only Jewish teachers there, of course. And each time a teacher had a chance to leave and go to another country, whichever way they could, they closed the school. And they sent all the students to the next school. So it ended up that I went to 3 kindergartens and after-school seminars until I left. Because each time they just transferred us. What were they going to do with them? But I liked it, okay? But things got worse and worse in Germany. I don't have to tell you, and Jews didn't belong. Same thing, like Jews couldn't belong to court and the teachers, and then after Kristallnacht, nobody could work anymore. So anyway, I went there until May, the end of May. And in the meantime, everything left. My parents couldn't afford our beautiful apartment anymore, and we had beautiful furniture. But the only thing that you could do, nobody wanted it, and nobody wanted, you rented it, I guess, for a high rent or low rent. So they found a very, very crummy place in a very poor, horrible neighborhood. And that's the only thing that they still could afford. But meantime, we still had one thing happening. My brother also went with the children's transport, but that's afterwards, okay? But first, he still went to school because he was only 13 or 13 at the time, okay, when Crystal Night was. And he still went to school. And so it was his bar mitzvah. When you're 13 years old, you have a bar mitzvah. You know about that? Okay. So he had religious school, you know, and all that. But all the rabbis immigrated. They all tried to leave, you know, and they had possibilities, because I found out now that people, or Jewish people who were of religious backgrounds, the Cantor, you know what a Cantor is? The Cantor is somebody in a synagogue which is more religious than mine, as I belong to a temple. They sang the prayers, and the rabbi would teach the prayers and so on. So anyway, everybody was leaving. And the teacher who was Michael's, Stefan's, that's my brother, not my son, Stefan's teacher was leaving. And he had the last bar mitzvah, and this was after Crystal died. He was doing one more bar mitzvah with boys, and then the next day was leaving for America, or I don't know, South America or something.
You know what a bar mitzvah is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they said I asked. So at that time, there were no synagogues left. I told you they all burned. But there was a Jewish home for the elderly, you know, what you have now, a retirement home, where some Jewish people were. And they didn't, and that has a little chapel, not a big synagogue, but a little prayer room, let's call it. And they didn't burn that one because they would have burned the Nazis. That's what the Nazis lived in the apartment house attached to it. So they couldn't burn it. So that was still there. Inside, very little. So my brother was, in January, after Crystal Night, he was bar mitzvah there. And instead of one or two children doing it, most of the time it's only one child who's bar mitzvah by themselves. This rabbi had about 6 boys left who were very close to their bar mitzvah. And it was this little chapel with a few seats. Only the parents could go because there was no room for friends or anything like that. And it was very, very hot. And when my brother was on, we call the bima, it's the altar, okay, to say his prayer, whatever he was supposed to do, it was very limited. He fainted on the bima. Oh. And it was horrible. You know, I'll never forget it in my life. And they revived him right away with some cold water or something like this. And then my mother immediately took him to the doctor, a Jewish doctor. You couldn't go to any Christian doctor. And he said, it's only nerves, he says, and the heat. It was unbearable hot because it was that very stiff, you know, place. So anyway, that was it. And then afterwards, instead of having a party like you have to do or whatever you do, we just had the immediate family, and I have lots more. I'm going to get them ready afterwards. But anyway, so we only had the immediate...
Come to the Kindertransport.
Yeah, okay.
That's what the girls are interested
Yeah, well,
in.
but
That's
this
okay.
is interesting
That's
too. So anyway, we just had the immediate family together. I'm coming to the Kindertransport because that was the next thing. So, and we just had couple of 2 aunts that were left in the immediate family. That was the last time we were at our place because my parents had to sell it, auction it off. And you know, when you auction off to Nazis, you get nothing for it, absolutely nothing, you know. Mm-hmm. So, but that was the last time we were together as a family. And then we moved to this horrible place that had lice in the bed, and it was terrible, in a terrible neighborhood, but we had no choice. My brother and I had to sleep together. And my grandmother, in the meantime, I didn't tell you, had moved also to Berlin, and first in her own place, and later on they lived with my parents, but then they couldn't That place had no room for her, so she moved to another relative.